Welcome everyone. Here we are. This is our first Facebook Live event. I'm Jennifer Talley. I'm here with Dr. Andrew Tatarsky. We're at the Center for Optimal Living here in New York City. It's a beautiful day. Finally, the weather's warmed up. So Andrew and I just wanted to start by welcoming everyone that's here watching us. We're encouraging you to add comments and chime in with questions or anything that you think that we want us to discuss today. Our hope in meeting with you all is to talk about the Center for Optimal Living, Integrative Harm Reduction Psychotherapy, and then to speak about the certificate program so that you know what it entails and what you might look forward to doing with us later in the fall.
Yeah, I would add that this is our first Facebook Live experience. We're new to this. We're both feeling a little awkward. We'll see how it goes. We might have some technical difficulties, but we really hope that this will be the first of many where we get to share our work with you, dialogue with you, learn from you and with you, on different topics that are related to harm reduction psychotherapy. So we're really excited to begin this journey together.
Great. So just so people know, we met in 2011. Right around the time that the center opened, and it was this kind of fortuitous meeting that I went over to the center to ask Andrew about trainings, and then he told me that he was opening up a new space, and then he asked me to join, and here we are.
Almost 6 years later.
Yeah, 6 years later, here we are. So it's been wonderful.
Yeah.
So I thought we could start with just, Andrew telling us how he got here. What is harm reduction? How did you get into this work?
Well, it's been a long, wonderful journey. I had begun working in the field with people with drug and alcohol problems right out of school around 30 years ago. And at that time, and I think still pretty much to this day, the field was completely dominated by a disease model, abstinence-only approach to treatment. And although I had come from a graduate program in clinical psychology and I had learned this sort of complex, sophisticated, integrative approach to working with people, when I got into the field, I got my first job out of my training in an addiction treatment program, actually up in East Harlem here in New York City, and I learned that the disease model, abstinence-only approach was sort of the only model that was acceptable, and that I was sort of told I had to throw out all of my psychotherapy training and learn this other approach. So really for the first 8 years of my career, I worked in abstinence-only treatment. I even worked in some centers that were really trying to do very innovative work, but still within that paradigm. The paradigm is really that abstinence is the only acceptable goal, and frequently people need to buy into that goal in order to get into treatment or to stay in treatment. That's the measure of success. And frequently when people don't achieve abstinence in that setting, they're asked to leave or go to a higher level of care. So over the course of those first 8 years, I think we helped many people, but I also began to see firsthand how limited the approach was. It was really limited to a very self-selected population of people who were ready, willing, and able to embrace abstinence. And what I began to consider is that the majority of people that are struggling with substance use problems and other addictive issues certainly are not ready, willing, or able to embrace abstinence. So I began to see that we were in fact not helping most folks. And I began to wonder, what's wrong with this picture? What is the central limiting factor? And it seemed to me that it was the abstinence requirement. So in the late 80s, I began to experiment in a little private practice that I had started, basically throwing out the abstinence requirement, meeting people on their own terms. And I began to get referrals from active drug users who were not supposed to be able to benefit from psychotherapy. Many of them engaged beautifully. They were very motivated for change. Many of them, cut back their substance use. Many of them stopped. We got to address other issues. And so I was in this sort of theoretical quandary. The dominant paradigm seemed not to be helping most folks. And me in my private practice, breaking all the rules, found that I was actually able to meaningfully engage people. And I had the good fortune at the time to have a relationship with Alan Marlatt, who is really one of, we consider him the godfather of harm reduction psychotherapy. And I called Alan up and I said, I shared my quandary with him, and he said, Andrew, you're doing harm reduction in your private practice. That was in 1994. So that was my introduction to harm reduction. As I learned about the model, I saw it really as an alternative philosophy and framework for setting up helping relationships. That I thought is much more effective and kind of relevant to the broad spectrum of people with substance use issues. And really decided at that point to devote my career to really drawing out the clinical, therapeutic, treatment implications of the harm reduction model. And that's really evolved into our version of harm reduction psychotherapy that we call integrative harm reduction psychotherapy, which will break this down a little bit more for you.
Right. And then all of this culminated in you developing the Center for Optimal Living, and it's been amazing just to be here and to witness the growth, right, and the tremendous need for this type of service for people. And what I've also observed over the years working here is that a lot of clinicians just sometimes don't know what to do with their clients who are struggling with substance use issues. And, that they often come to us with a lot of questions and just curiosity about what it is that we're doing here. I don't know if you want to say what feels unique about what we're doing, what feels so appealing and attractive to people about this work.
Well, I wonder if it might be useful for us to just sort of define some basic terms that we're working with. I know that many of the people that are joining us today are friends of ours, colleagues of ours, and work in harm reduction work. But there may be many folks out there that are not really familiar with these terms. So, what is harm reduction? Harm reduction is essentially a approach to reducing the harms associated with substance use or problematic substance use and other risky and addictive behavior. The essential shift from the abstinence-only approach is that the harm reduction philosophy accepts that any positive change, any reduction in drug-related harm, or the issues that are related to drug-related harm that contribute to it, are acceptable goals, any positive change goals. So we shift from abstinence only to any positive change. We accept those as viable goals and as measures of success. And so essentially that framework opens the door to people who are ready to engage around any positive change goal and any motivational stage of change. So, which this in fact includes abstinence for those folks that are interested in pursuing abstinence, and we certainly have many of those folks here.
And that's an important point, just to pause there, because I think that's something I've heard over the years too, is that people assume that harm reduction doesn't embrace or include abstinence, and that's such a misconception that I think we want to demystify.
Right, so it's a beautiful umbrella concept that really can meet people. This is sort of the second principle. You hear this as a central idea in harm reduction, that we meet people wherever they're ready to begin their process of positive change. So that means that we can really tailor interventions or tailor what we bring to people precisely to where they are, around their goals, around their motivation, around them as unique, complex humans in unique social and cultural circumstances. So this umbrella concept includes abstinence on one end, but it also includes safer use, or even the consideration of what are my goals. And I would argue, and I would ask everyone who's joining us today to consider. At the point that people become concerned about their substance use, what percentage of those folks are really ready, willing, or able to embrace abstinence? I ask professional groups this question all the time, and most people agree it's probably close to zero. But that's the group that we really want to engage. And so harm reduction is really a kind of framework that enables us to engage this majority of folks where they're ready to begin. And usually it's with questions. You know, what's the nature of my problem? What goals are really realistic for me? What approach best suits me in terms of my unique needs and strengths and so on? So any positive change, meeting people wherever they're ready to begin their process. We embrace small incremental change rather than asking people to make quantum change that they may not be ready for. And we finally work collaboratively. So that collaboration is inherently, I think, an empowering approach to working with people. We see us working with our clients as therapeutic teams. This is actually a term that one of the other major contributors to this work, Pat Denning, has coined, the therapy team. And we put our heads together to really figure out what is the nature of the problem, what goals, and what therapeutic approach make the most sense for folks. So finally, we might consider harm reduction psychotherapy is psychotherapy that embraces or based on these core principles.
Exactly. And then we work really flexibly with people too, you know, that out of this exploration, out of this assessment, and then, you know, bringing a spirit of curiosity and, you know, wanting to really empower people to really think about the goals. You know, ideally, how would they want to have this substance in their life or not? And how can we map out a game plan that really enables them to develop the skills in order to meet their goals? And you're right. I mean, my observation over the years has been that it takes a long time, and people make changes, but at a very gradual pace. And I think we need to honor that and really respect people's process. And I think that what I also really like about the model is that it can be very specific and very skill focused for some, and others really benefit from more of an open exploration and more of a, you know, analytic approach to the work. But we can blend these two traditions together in this beautiful way. And I think if you want to say more about the integrative piece of the model, I think that would be helpful.
Well, you know, recently we've been talking about the significance of harm reduction psychotherapy in terms of a scientific revolution that we're in the midst of. And the way that we think about this revolution is that there's both a model shift, that is a shift in the way that we understand problematic substance use and other addictive behaviors, from this old primitive disease model, which was coined by Jelinek back in the early part of the 20th century. And according to that disease model, abstinence was the only way to arrest, so to speak, the disease, or send the disease into remission. In fact, that model doesn't really capture the complexity, the diversity of you know, this huge population of people that struggle with substances. In fact, there is not a unitary course. People vary on multiple dimensions. People come to problematic substance use by multiple pathways, and there are multiple pathways to positive change, or healing, growth, and positive change, which is the way that we think about recovery. So we need a model that can embrace or really explain that complexity, and in fact, the way that we think about it is as psycho-biosocial, all factors which interact in ways that are unique for each person. And in that context, substance use and these other problematic behaviors become multiply meaningful to the individual. And that model, I think, really helps us to explain why substances can both be very helpful and meaningful to folks, even while they become increasingly problematic. So That model shift, I think, is sort of the theoretical foundation for what we think we need to have is an integrative approach that can bring together multiple therapeutic strategies, that will address those biopsychosocial factors within a harm reduction frame. And that's really how we think about the integrative harm reduction psychotherapy model. So within that frame, we bring together relational interventions, because we think that complex behaviors always have relational meaning. We bring in a psychodynamic or exploratory aspect that's really designed to clarify these multiple meanings, the meaning that substances have in people's lives. But we also need to have active strategies and interventions to address cognition and behavior. Problematic behavior needs to be understood and assessed, and then we can goal set around positive change and bring very active behavioral strategies to support people in making behavioral change. And maybe this is something you can talk a little bit more about. We also think that mindfulness is a very important skill. It's a cognitive behavioral skill that really supports both the exploration and the cognitive behavioral change. We think that mindfulness in a way is like a bridge between meaning, cognition, and behavior, and just supports the positive change process.
Right, and so my background has certainly been in helping people develop mindfulness skills, and really it's a tool, and it's a way of just being with yourself with curiosity, being able to kind of zoom out, as I often say with my clients. Can we just zoom out and observe what's happening right now? And particularly when people are noticing a strong urge, right? A strong urge to engage in a behavior, to use a substance, to really be able to put a pause, really to be able to stop and to be curious about what's going on here. What important information is being conveyed through this experience of an urge? And then how can I just sit still for a second, take a breath maybe, really check in with myself, and then consider, how do I want to respond to this urge in a way that's aligned with my goals, with how I want to take care of myself. And so mindfulness, as Andrew was saying, we really see that as a bridge, as a link that integrates the work really beautifully here. And we have groups that teach our clients mindfulness. We do it individually in our sessions, and then we also teach it in our trainings and how we work with people in supervision too.
So maybe we'll make a few more brief comments about our work and the center, and then we can say a few things about the certificate program in harm reduction psychotherapy. So where we've come to in trying to develop a really comprehensive therapeutic model that helps us to organize what we do in the room with patients, with clients, and also it's a model that we're teaching clinicians and organizations in a number of different contexts. So what we've done is we've mapped the therapeutic process into 7 therapeutic tasks. It's a way to really think about, what are the major things that we're doing in the room when we're working with clients. And I'll just quickly go through the 7 tasks. If people are interested, you can email us or Facebook message us, and we can send you a paper, or there are a number of papers, some of which actually are available on our website for free. The first and most important therapeutic task is establishing, maintaining the therapeutic alliance. And here's where I think the harm reduction framework is so powerful, because we need to start where people are and agree on goals and strategies, working together as a team in order to forge a therapeutic alliance. It's so harm reduction sort of reminds us that the alliance is the most important foundation for all of the other things that we do. Then around that alliance, a relationship is built. And that relationship varies from person to person. We have to use ourselves flexibly in different ways depending on the kind of relationship that's going to be facilitating for that individual. And we think that the relationship itself has a healing potential to help people heal, early relationship difficulties and also that get played out around their problematic behaviors. Then enhancing self-regulation and self-management skills is a key. We might consider that addictive experience and behavior is inherently somehow related to difficulties in self-management, self-regulation. That is, the capacity to sit still with uncomfortable feelings. And that often is a prerequisite to enabling people to sit still so that they can begin to assess the nature of the problem. And so collaborative assessment, or assessment as treatment, is the fourth therapeutic task. Then, given that these behaviors are meaningful and have powerful, important functions for people, even while they become problematic, we recognize that ambivalence is a central part of what needs to be resolved. That is, there's a part of a person that is invested in the problematic behavior, even while there's another part that actually wants to change, either to stop or cut back, use more safely. So embracing ambivalence, inviting the ambivalence into the room becomes a key part to then opening up a discussion of new ways to resolve that. New goals, new ways to resolve whatever the substance is helping with, which then would support the part of the person that wants to make positive change with the substance. And once we've got our harm reduction goals in effect, now we can set about creating comprehensive, personalized plans that bring together, the cognitive, behavioral, biological, mindfulness strategies, experiential strategies, in ways that are, fully tailored to each individual. So that's the integrative harm reduction model. The Center for Optimal Living was created 6 years ago. John Passianis, Michael Benibke, Jen Talley, and I were all part of the founding team. We came together and thought that there should be a home in New York City, or in the world, that is a kind of platform for advancing this world to help change the way that substance use is treated globally. I mean, we think that there's a global problem, and that this work can really address, the global needs. So this is a platform, and on this platform we have a comprehensive psychotherapy center that really is kind of a showcase and an ongoing laboratory for the development and evolution of the work. And we also have a professional training component, which consists of intensive 3-day trainings, this 1-year certificate program, which Jen is going to tell us about in a minute. We've been consulting to organizations around the United States and now 14 countries around the world. And we now have plans to be working with a number of other countries. I mean, it's fascinating how the interest in this work is just exploding. So we're very excited about how things are evolving.
So in 2014, Andrew and I really worked together to build the certificate program, because we just got the sense that there was such a need to train people in this model. We were getting a lot of inquiries and people were requesting more trainings, and so we thought, well, why don't we just put this together? And so we started at the new school, and since then we've built this program. We've had several cohorts go through the program now, and we've decided to let's make the home for the certificate program here at the Center for Optimal Living. And so this September we will be launching the program here at the center, and we've tweaked the way that the class is structured a bit. And so now the way that the classes will work is that we'll have 2 semesters of 8 classes a week, and then everyone will also attend our intensive 3-day training in December. And so the feedback that we've gotten from people is that it's been tremendously helpful in a very practical sense, the people that do the certificate program can bring the skills and what they've learned directly into their practices, into their clinical settings that they're working in, and even if they're doing advocacy and harm reduction work at a more grassroots level, this approach is really resonant for them as well. And so we see the certificate program as really providing a broad foundation in the theory, you know, an understanding of the nuances of the social political context around substance use nationally, internationally. And then we also have a very practical element to the training program where we focus a lot on case presentations. We use Andrew's book, you know, it's got this rich case material. We also do kind of ad hoc supervision with people in the class who are already in practice and come in with needs and questions and concerns that we can in the moment address, which is really lovely to see. And then we'll also do more experiential exercises with the class and do role plays and didactics. And we've loved doing it, you know, and it's something that I think we get a lot of joy out of, you know, watching the journey that the class goes through each year when they come in kind of green or some of them are more seasoned, others are more green to the field, and then at the end it's this beautiful group that comes together. You know, we've seen that every single year, and we're looking forward to building this new class this fall. And then the other piece of it, just logistically, is that, you know, I know that people are often worried about getting enough CE credits, and we're fortunate to be able to offer CEs for social workers, for CASACs. We'll do that again this year as well.
I might also mention that we've had lots and lots of inquiries from people who are not in New York City who have been interested in, you know, whether we can offer this online. And we've finally decided that we're actually going to put together an online version so that people all around the world can join us. It's probably going to happen in the fall of 2018. So stay tuned for that, you know, those of you that are not here in the city. I guess we only have a few minutes left, and I wanted to mention that we really believe that this work entails both a set of skills and a knowledge base that we make use of when we're working with our clients. But we also believe that therapists and clinicians use their experience, their felt emotional experience, body experience, as a central part of how we understand, you know, and connect with empathically our clients. And so in all of our trainings, we're really working on multiple levels, both theoretically but also practically in the training. And mindfulness practice is a very, very powerful practice for you know, developing your capacity to be aware of your lived, felt, subjective experience moment to moment. You know, most of our, in our training processes generally, we have been very lucky to be able to create safe spaces where people can work on these multiple levels and connect with one another on multiple levels as well, which I think then becomes a kind of a model for how we then can bring that into our work with clients.
So if you want more information about the program, you can visit our website, which is centerforoptimalliving.com. And at the very top, there's a tab that says training. So you'll see there's information about the certificate program. There's a brief application form. And then you can also, you're welcome to email me with questions. We also encourage you to stay connected with us online, on Facebook, join our mailing list. We're just getting a question in from Karen, so I just want to make sure that I address Karen's question.
Well, meanwhile, I should say that Alexis has joined us, and Alexis actually participated in one of our 3-day trainings. So, oh, and so did Truth Farm. Hi, so happy to see you. And Zishan is an old friend, Facebook friend. We've been crossing paths, and Sandra's here as well.
And so there's a question about whether or not people that are KSACs would benefit from the training. We've certainly had many people actually go through our training who have had KSACs or who aren't licensed professionals per se, or still in graduate school, for instance. And I think these are skills that are applicable across the range of helping professions, so that, you know, the skills that we teach people about and the theories that we talk about and the techniques, I think would be really applicable across a range of settings. I don't know if you'd agree.
Yeah. Hi, Daniel. I just saw Daniel is here, and Claire just joined from Mexico. Claire also participated in a 2-day training that we gave in Tepoztlan, Mexico, following the Global Ibogaine Conference a couple of years ago. Hi, Claire. Yeah, when we think about harm reduction psychotherapy, this is really an important point to clarify. Those 7 therapeutic tasks that I talked about may be more or less relevant to people who, you know, have different jobs, you know, are playing different roles in, you know, the supporting people that are working on their addictive issues or substance use issues. So we find that you know, a diverse group of people in our classes and in our trainings really enhances the discussion. Diversity, we think, kind of fires up creativity, and people can take different parts of the training and adapt it and apply it in their settings. So, for example, the therapeutic alliance skills, creating safety for people, is something that everyone who comes into contact with the client can benefit from learning or getting better at. And, you know, just some of the core skills have to do with empathic listening, active listening. We call that sometimes harm reduction listening, empathic resonance and reflection, so that we're continually trying to listen to capture the client's experience, reflect it back in such a way that the client feels really heard and understood. And those skills can be useful for everyone in an organization. Even though they're not typically doing in-the-room psychotherapy, there can be a kind of a therapeutic moment that can happen around that experience of empathic attunement.
Right, I see Amy Smith just joined.
Hi, Amy.
Hi, Amy. If there are people watching us now, and if you have questions that we haven't yet addressed, please write a comment so we can make sure to get to it before we sign off here. And we, you know, our goal in just launching this is to be able to do this in the future. And so if there are topics or specific skills or themes that you'd want us to do another Facebook Live event on, we'd love to hear your comments and suggestions, and we can plan something in the future. I mean, we had thrown out some ideas about, you know, maybe doing something on urge surfing and mindfulness just as a didactic Facebook Live event where people can comment. We could do something on just the 7 therapeutic tasks, harm reduction goal setting, working, you know, in the alliance, and, you know, as Andrew was describing, this form of really empathic and attuned listening. So we'd love to be doing more and more of these things with the community, so we'd love to hear from you and welcome your feedback.
And what a great way to say hello to friends that are all around the world that we don't get to see that often. So are there any other final questions before we say goodbye? Or anything else that we want to address at this point?
Just to encourage people to check out our website, centerforoптимalliving.com. Our trainings are listed on the trainings tab. We have a newsletter. You know, we're both reachable over email or Facebook. You know, we'd love to connect, and you know, we really love what we do, and we want to just make it more available to people if we can.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to sign
Thanks
up.
so much for joining us, and I look forward to seeing everybody at our next Facebook Live, and some of you in person at the various events.
Oh, one last quick question. For now, the certification is only available in person or through, the 3-day training that we offer. We will definitely create an online version of the certificate program. Realistically, I don't think that will be ready to be launched until the fall of 2018. So for those who are interested, and if you can, afford to take a weekend away and come to New York City, our training is going to be the first weekend of December here in New York City. We'd love to see you there, or you can stay tuned to hear more about the online version that will come in the fall of 2018.
Okay.
All right.
So
Thank you, everyone.
be well.
Have a good weekend.
And you take care.